So this year for our AS Advanced production...
Stop. A2.
A2.
Stand by. Take two. Action.
So this year for our A2 Advanced production, me and James have decided to do a 5-minute film in its entirety, as well as making a radio advert and a poster for our ancillary tasks.
The synopsis for the film is, well, I'm just going to read it out now. We haven't figured out a name for the character yet, but we're not sure the name will be mentioned. But anyway, here it is. So, Dave is was with the most beautiful girl he could ever be with until he was persuaded by her to commit a crime he never wanted to commit. His family and friends disowned him, but now, after 3 years of being in prison, he's finally out and trying to come to terms with the solitary, isolated world he now finds himself in.
Right, our film is a drama, however it is based on film noir, so we've kept some of the same conventions and formats they use, such as the femme fatale, which will be Dave's girlfriend. We also plan to use black and white with camera angles and lighting to make the main character feel isolated and alone, and just try and convey that emotion across to the audience, so the audience get a real sense of emotion during the film. We're going for a very emotive story as opposed to an excellent storyline.
We want to make sure that the kind of camera angles are kind of artsy, so using like Venetian blinds and things like that, which is kind of like a conformity in film noir. So yeah. One of these things, you know, using lots of shadow and lighting, kind of like uplighting or downlighting on the faces and things like that, so it kind of like pick up a brooding kind of feeling. Yeah.
Our target audience is a educated middle class audience, kind of 15 and above really, because we need them to be aware of the messages that we're trying to send out and to understand the kind of emotions that he's going through.
Which is also the kind of same which we find in art house cinemas. It's kind of people who, because art house cinemas are quite a niche market, they're therefore rather kind of expensive to watch. So the people watching them will be slightly more middle class, which means that as well as the mise en scène, we're kind of like trying to, which will be a really, really key thing in our film. We want to make sure that they kind of interpret the messages that we're giving out, and sort of like, so like the fact that he is isolated and alone, and little things. And kind of like, like of his past, maybe some photos or like, a prison mark on his hand or something like that, which the audience will pick up on and be able to digest and kind of interpret into like this isolated kind of guy.
We did some research in similar media products, and also we kind of researched the films that we took inspiration from. One of the main film that really inspired us was In Bruges, with Colin Farrell. We like the way that the film makes the main character feel really isolated because of the crime he's committed, and the way that even he's in such beautiful surroundings, they manage to make the character feel really sad and alone through camera angles, mise en scène, and various other things. We also looked at Death Proof by Quentin Tarantino. Even though it was a flop, we liked the way that he purposely made it into a B-list film to create an artsy feel to it, and the way he used post-production to make the film seem a lot more artsy than art house.
The other films we looked at were Sin City, with this black and white kind of, with this black and white, very, very stylised cinematography, using only selective colours and things like that. And it was also, it was very much kind of stylised film noir. It has a femme fatale, and it's using lots of stories all sort of mixing up and into one another. And we did like the way it sort of used significant colours, so we're not sure if we will use that. And the other film we looked at was Watchmen, for again its quite artsy camera angles and stuff, because it was based on a comic book. So all the shots were very significant. Each shot went to the tile it was set in, and which is a thing we picked up in Sin City, is that you could almost sort of put it into a sort of a grid, like a comic book strip, and it would look almost like a comic book. And so it's not something we want to look at as our film because it's a film noir, but it's definitely something we want to do, is make each shot as significant as the next one, and making sure we get it right, because the mise en scène will be really quite important to get right.
For the ancillary task, we chose a radio. We've chosen to do a radio advert, and to do this we thought, looking at other radio trailers and films, it's quite difficult to do, because usually you hear hundreds of explosions and like really cheesy voiceover like explaining kind of the storyline. but we've decided to go for people talking about the film, because having audio extracts of the film won't do it justice to how we want it to feel. We want the audience's reactions to be the focus.
Yeah, we don't want to sort of preconceive any ideas as well, so this is why we don't want to sort of show off the film as it is. We want to sort of show off the reviews and say you should watch this film, but not actually give anything away about the storyline, which is one of the dilemmas we did have. The other ancillary task we're going to do was the poster, and so that would be sort of, you know, as a combination, again, sort of using the kind of film noir effects and things like that, and fiddling about with lighting and doing some experiments in Photoshop. We've managed to find a couple of effects which we can use to sort of get our poster right, and now it's just a case of sort of pretty much making it, isn't it? Yeah. So yeah.
I'm wondering whether you've looked at any of the classic Hollywood film noirs like The Maltese Falcon. If you haven't, I thoroughly recommend that you do.
Yeah.
We looked at some in class. We have had like a couple of looks through on YouTube. It's very interesting the way each film noir is portrayed. Everyone is there's not a kind of like a really grindy one, you know, with it's like a really kind of a guy in the gutter, sort of really milling about. It's mainly, you know, the femme fatale tends to be all covered in jewellery, wearing
middle class,
with one of those really long sort of cigarette things, walking downstairs.
Well, they're gangsters' models going into middle class.
But
they're often set, you know, run down Chicago or something like that.
Yeah, but it often starts kind of the ones we looked at about 3 on YouTube, and often they have an unlinear plot line. Like it will start at the end, and with a voice, and then a voice will take you through the whole story
and how it got to that bit, and usually from him being at the top and then hitting rock bottom, and then him killing himself, or him killing someone else, or ending up in jail, and a bad ending.
But my only concern that I have, and it's hopefully a small one, is, you know, with a film noir, there's normally, as you say, a lot of multiple plots running, but you can get away with it because you've got an hour and a half or 2 hours. You've got 5 minutes. What plans do you have in place to avoid losing the viewer in too many twists and turns and leaving them unsatisfied?
With the twists and turns, we're going to kind of we're going to have a voiceover as we go through the film, so it's going to be explaining the film as it goes along. The main idea was him to almost see him at the beginning of the film, about to kill himself, or what the people might, what the audience might think as about to kill himself, and then it sort of goes back to how he got into the situation, and he would be explaining to the audience how he did this, and obviously through narration you can actually cut and get rid of a lot of the time needed to show other bits of the story. It can mainly be explained in about 5 seconds of certain situations and how we got into that. And so that's what we're going to plan on doing.
Okay. Questions from the floor? Anybody? Everybody happy?
Are you starting your film with him in prison?
No, we're not. We're going to start it with him pretty much at the ending of this whole story, which is him about to hang himself, which then loops back into how he actually got to that situation, and then it's up to the audience to decide whether he hung himself or not. And we're not sure. We're still kind of rejigging with the ending, but we're not sure if he is going to kill himself or if he's just sort of trying to get himself back on his feet. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Brilliant. Great. Thank you, guys.